"Don't throw me out. I can warm your bed," she begged, but he chose to warm her heart first. The small wooden house stood alone on the edge of the hill, surrounded by snow-covered fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Inside, a man sat by the fireplace, the flames casting flickering shadows across the room. He was used to nights like this, quiet, cold, and empty. Life had a way of teaching him patience and resilience, but it had also left him alone. Years of working the land and caring for the small property had built his body strong, but it had left his heart heavy with solitude. As he sipped the last of his coffee, the sound of a knock on the door startled him. At first he thought it was the wind shaking the old wood. But then it came again, soft and hesitant, like the tiptoe of someone afraid to be noticed. He set the cup down and approached the door, his heart slowing as he saw a shadow through the frosted window. When he opened it, he saw her. A woman, young but worn by life, standing with her shoulders hunched against the biting wind. Her clothes were thin and torn in places, and snow clung to her hair and coat. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, exhaustion, and a plea that did not need words. For a moment they simply stared at each other, the man, uncertain of what he should do, and the woman trembling in the cold. I need shelter," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was quiet, hesitant, almost as if she had rehearsed the words over and over in her mind, waiting for the courage to speak. "Please, I don't have anywhere else to go." The man studied her for a long moment. In another life, he might have ignored her, telling himself that it wasn't his responsibility, that the cold night and empty fields were not meant for strangers. But something in her eyes, the raw vulnerability she carried, made him pause. He could see that this was not someone looking for mischief or trouble. She was simply human, desperate, and alone. "Come inside," he said finally. His voice was calm, steady, not soft but not harsh. He stepped aside, letting her into the warmth of his home. She hesitated for a heartbeat before stepping over the threshold, letting the door close behind her. The warmth hit her like a wave, and for the first time in hours, or maybe days, she felt a sense of relief. The room smelled of wood smoke and the faint, comforting scent of home. The man gestured toward a chair near the fire. "Sit. You look frozen." She lowered herself onto the chair, shivering, her hands clutching her knees. He watched her silently for a moment before moving to the small kitchen area. He pulled out a kettle, filling it with water from a jug and setting it to boil on the stove. The gentle hiss of steam soon filled the room. "Do you want tea?" he asked, his voice careful. It wasn't just an offer of warmth, it was a question of trust, a bridge he was extending across the gap of her fear. She nodded, grateful for the kindness but unsure if she deserved it. "Yes, thank you," she murmured. As he prepared the tea, she looked around the room. It was simple, not lavish. Just a few pieces of furniture, a bed in the corner, a small table, and a bookshelf filled with worn, well-loved books. Everything in the room spoke of a quiet life, a life of routine and hard work. It was a life unlike hers, one she had only glimpsed from the shadows of towns and doorways. When he returned with 2 steaming mugs, he handed one to her, holding the other for himself. "Drink slowly," he said. "It will warm you from the inside." She sipped the tea cautiously. The heat traveled down her throat, spreading warmth to her fingers and toes. She closed her eyes, letting herself relax, if only for a moment. The wind howled outside, but inside, for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of safety. "You don't have to tell me anything if you don't want to," he said gently, taking a sip of his own tea. "You're safe here, at least for tonight." Her eyes opened, surprise flickering across her face. Most people she had met in her life demanded something in return for help. But this man did not. He did not ask for her story, her money, or her loyalty. He simply offered shelter, warmth, and a quiet respect that she had almost forgotten existed. I don't know what to say," she whispered. Her voice trembled, not with fear this time, but with a raw, vulnerable gratitude. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. Just rest for now, that's enough." She glanced at the bed in the corner, hesitant. The man noticed her hesitation. "You can sleep there," he said. "It's clean and warm, you've been out in the cold too long." Her lips trembled into the faintest smile. "Thank you," she said. I don't even know your name." "I'm just a man who lives alone," he said with a small shrug. "It doesn't matter much. You can call me whatever you like tonight, just rest." The fire crackled in the hearth, filling the room with its comforting sound. Outside, the wind continued to rage, snow piling up against the sides of the house. But inside, there was a fragile peace, the kind that forms when strangers meet at the intersection of kindness and need. She moved slowly toward the bed, her movements cautious. Every step felt surreal, as if stepping into a world she had only dreamed of. She lowered herself onto the mattress, pulling the blanket close around her. The warmth seeped into her bones, but it was not the warmth of fire alone that comforted her. It was the warmth of understanding, of human compassion extended without expectation. The man watched her for a moment, then returned to the chair by the fire. He picked up a book, but his eyes kept drifting toward her. He could feel the tension in her shoulders slowly release, the way her fingers loosened around the edge of the blanket. It was a small victory, but one that mattered in a night full of cold and hardship. "You don't have to stay up all night worrying," he said softly, breaking the silence. "The world can wait for a few hours. Sleep. Tomorrow will be easier." She nodded, closing her eyes. For the first time in a long time, her thoughts slowed, her fears quieted. The darkness outside no longer seemed threatening because there was light inside, and not just the light of fire but the light of someone choosing to care. Hours passed. The wind's howling became a distant murmur as sleep wrapped around her like a protective cloak. The man stayed by the fire, reading, listening, and occasionally glancing at her. He thought about how life brought people together in the most unexpected ways, how moments of compassion could change lives more than grand gestures ever could. By morning, the snow had stopped falling, and a pale sun began to rise over the horizon. The woman stirred, slowly opening her eyes to a world that looked different in the soft morning light. The house felt warmer, brighter, safer. She sat up, feeling a sense of gratitude she could not yet fully express. The man noticed her movement and smiled faintly. "Good morning," he said. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, a genuine smile breaking across her face. "Yes, I slept better than I have in a long time, thank you." "You're welcome," he said simply. "Come, I'll make you breakfast." As they moved into the small kitchen, the woman realized that this was more than shelter. It was kindness without conditions, a human connection that reminded her she was not invisible. And for the man, it was a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion, a warm bed, a cup of tea, a listening ear, could leave the deepest marks on someone's heart. The first night had passed, cold and uncertain, but it had also passed with understanding, patience, and the quiet beginnings of trust. And in that small wooden house on the edge of the hill, two lonely souls began to realize that the world could still hold goodness, even in the darkest, coldest nights. The morning sunlight spilled into the small wooden house, casting warm light across the room. The woman, who had slept through the night wrapped in the soft blanket, stretched her arms slowly and breathed deeply. It was the first time in many nights that she had slept without fear or anxiety. The warmth of the fire, the softness of the bed, and most importantly, the presence of someone who did not judge her, all of it combined to give her a strange, almost foreign feeling: safety. The man was already in the kitchen, quietly preparing breakfast. He had risen early, as was his habit, and was cooking simple food: eggs, bread, and a little porridge. The smell of warm food filled the room, blending with the faint aroma of wood smoke from the fireplace. The woman watched him for a moment, noticing the calm rhythm of his movements, the quiet care he put into every action. It was peaceful, almost soothing, like watching someone move in harmony with the world around them. "Good morning," he said without turning, his voice steady. "I made breakfast. Sit and eat while it's still warm." She nodded and moved to the table, still a little unsure of how to behave in this place. Her life had been filled with moments of urgency and danger, where food had been scarce and kindness had always come with strings attached. Here, everything was different. There was no demand, no fear, just a simple invitation to sit, to eat, and to exist without worry. As she ate, he poured her a cup of tea and placed it gently in front of her. She took it with both hands, feeling the warmth seep into her fingers and the soothing aroma calm her mind. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "Eat. You need strength." For the next few hours, they moved through the morning in quiet routine. The woman helped with small tasks, clearing the table, washing the dishes, and sweeping the floor. It was the first time in a long time that she had felt useful in a safe way. Every small action reminded her that she was capable, that she could contribute, and that she was not just a burden. The man watched her without comment, offering gentle guidance when needed. "Be careful with the dishes," he said once, and later, "the floor is slippery there." Nothing more. No criticism, no harsh words, just quiet support that let her feel her own progress. As the day wore on, conversation began to flow naturally. She hesitated at first, speaking only in short phrases, but he listened without pressing, giving her space to open up in her own time. She spoke of small things, her love for animals, her favorite seasons, memories of a childhood that had been bright for a few fleeting years before life had turned hard. He did not pry into painful details, though she hinted at loss, struggle, and the long, lonely nights she had endured. In turn, he shared fragments of his life, simple stories of work on the land, of winters colder than this one, of challenges he had faced alone. There was no boasting, no complaint, only honesty and the quiet presence of someone who had learned to endure and survive. Listening to him, she began to see that strength and kindness could coexist, that a person could be both capable and gentle. By mid-afternoon, the sun had moved higher, and the cold outside seemed less harsh than it had the night before. The woman ventured closer to the window and looked out at the snow-covered fields. For a long moment, she simply stared, noticing the way the sunlight made the snow glitter, how the world could still hold beauty even in the harshest conditions. She felt a strange lightness in her chest, a sense of hope that she had not allowed herself in years. The man joined her by the window silently, not speaking, simply standing and watching. The silence between them was comfortable, not awkward, filled with the mutual understanding of two people learning to trust each other. "You see that tree?" he said softly after a while, pointing to an old oak in the distance. "It has stood there longer than I have. Strong winds, snow, storms, it doesn't move. It just keeps standing. Reminds me that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and patient." She looked at the tree, then back at him and felt a shiver, not from cold but from the truth in his words. She had been running from life, from hardship, from people who hurt her. But maybe, like the tree, she could find a way to stand still for a moment, to regain strength, and to grow quietly, patiently, and steadily. As the afternoon passed, she began helping more confidently, not just with chores but with small decisions. She offered to fetch wood for the fire, to help carry water, and to prepare vegetables for the next meal. He let her do these things, stepping back and letting her take initiative. Each task she completed built a quiet pride in her heart, a reminder that she could trust herself and others without fear. By evening, a gentle routine had formed. They shared a simple dinner, laughed softly at small jokes, and drank tea while sitting by the fire. The woman began to relax in a way she had not felt in years. There was no urgency, no fear, no expectation, just a safe space where she could breathe, exist, and slowly begin to heal. After dinner, she sat on the chair by the fire while he read from a book. Occasionally, he would look up and smile at her, a gesture so small, yet so powerful, that it made her chest tighten with an unfamiliar warmth. She realized that she had been starved for simple human connection, for kindness that asked for nothing in return. And here it was, offered freely by a man who had nothing to gain from her presence but the knowledge that he had helped someone in need. Night came again, but it did not feel threatening. The woman lay in the bed, listening to the crackling fire and the soft movements of the man as he prepared the house for the night. She did not speak of the past, and he did not ask. The silence was not empty. It was filled with understanding, trust, and a growing bond that needed no words. Before sleep claimed her, she whispered almost to herself, "I never thought anyone would treat me like this, like I mattered." The man replied softly, "Everyone matters. Some just forget that sometimes." The next morning brought more sunlight, more warmth, and more trust. The woman had begun to realize that she could stay here safely, that her life could take a small turn toward hope. She started to see the man not just as someone who offered shelter, but as someone who believed in the value of human life, someone who chose compassion over judgment. Days turned into a small routine. She helped with chores, cooked meals, carried water, and fed the small animals that wandered near the house. The man continued his quiet work on the land, but now he was not entirely alone. They shared laughter, conversations, and small victories, like a meal cooked perfectly, or a fire that burned just long enough to warm them both through the night. Through it all, she began to heal, not fully but in small, steady steps. She remembered how to trust, how to rely on kindness without fear, how to believe that people could care without expecting anything in return. And he, in turn, remembered the strength of patience, the power of quiet support, and the joy of helping another human being without any reward. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of pink and orange over the snowy hills, she turned to him. I don't know how to thank you. I've never had anyone care like this." He smiled faintly, a warmth in his eyes. "You don't have to thank me, just take care of yourself. That's all I could ever hope for." For the first time in years, she felt safe, not just physically but emotionally. The man had given her more than a bed or a meal. He had given her a chance to remember that life could be gentle, that hearts could be kind, and that even in the harshest conditions, hope could grow. And as the night settled over the small wooden house, with the fire glowing softly and the wind howling outside, both of them realized that their lives had begun to change. A simple act of shelter had blossomed into something far deeper: trust, respect, and the quiet beginnings of healing. Days turned into weeks, and life in the small wooden house began to take on a rhythm both gentle and comforting. The woman woke each morning with a sense of purpose, something she had not felt for a long time. She helped with chores, cooked meals, carried water from the well, and even tended to a small vegetable patch near the house. Each task, simple as it was, gave her confidence and reminded her that she could be useful and self-reliant. The man, in turn, watched silently, offering guidance when needed but never criticism. His quiet support allowed her to grow, to take small steps toward independence, and to remember what it meant to be trusted. At first, the woman had been shy and hesitant. She would shrink back when he spoke directly to her, afraid of overstepping boundaries or making a mistake. But over time, she began to relax. She laughed softly at his jokes, joined him in chores without hesitation, and even offered her own ideas for improving life around the house. When he asked for help preparing a meal, she suggested small ways to make it easier and more enjoyable. He accepted her advice with a nod and a smile, reinforcing the fact that her contributions were valued. One afternoon, as they worked together outside, she paused to look at the field stretching out before them. The snow had melted in places, revealing patches of earth and the first signs of green shoots peeking through. "Life keeps coming back," she said softly, almost to herself. "Even after the cold, even after the storms, it comes back." The man glanced at her, nodding slowly. It does, he agreed, and sometimes people do the same. They survive the storms, the hardships, and slowly, quietly, they grow again. She turned to him, her eyes wide with curiosity and hope. Do you think people can really change? I mean, after so much has happened. He looked out at the horizon, thoughtful. I think people can change if they're willing to try. It's not easy and it takes time, but every small step matters. His words lingered in her mind long after they returned to the house. She realized that this place, this man, and these simple acts of kindness were giving her the chance to start over. Not to forget her past, but to build something new despite it. The evenings became their quiet time together. After the chores were done and the fire was lit, they would sit by it, sipping tea or simply listening to the crackle of the flames. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they sat in comfortable silence. The woman would often find herself staring into the fire, thinking about the life she had lived and the life she could have now. For the first time in years, she felt hope, not the fragile, fleeting hope of her past, but a steady, growing sense of possibility. One evening, as the fire burned low, she asked a question that had been on her mind for days. Why are you helping me? You don't know me and I haven't done anything to deserve this. He looked at her, his expression calm and gentle. Because everyone deserves kindness, whether they deserve it or not. I've learned that the world can be harsh and unfair, but if you can give someone a little warmth, a little care, maybe it can make a difference. That's all I'm doing. She thought about his words long after he had spoken. She realized that she had been expecting the world to treat her harshly because that was all she had ever known. But here was someone who treated her with respect, patience, and understanding. No judgment, no demand, just human kindness extended freely. As the days passed, she began to feel stronger, more confident, and more in control of her own life. She began to plan small things, what she would cook, how she could improve the house, even what she might do after she left. The man noticed these changes and encouraged them quietly, letting her take initiative while providing guidance only when needed. One afternoon, as they worked in the garden together, a small bird landed near them, chirping loudly. The woman froze, afraid to scare it away. The man smiled and whispered, "It's all right. It won't hurt you." Slowly she relaxed and watched as the bird hopped closer, pecking at the soil. She laughed softly, feeling a joy she had not felt in years. "Even the birds trust this place," she said, smiling at him. He nodded. "And maybe, little by little, people can too." As the weeks went on, the woman began to share more of her story. Not the painful details, but the small moments, the friends she had lost, the places she had traveled, the lessons she had learned. Each story was met with quiet listening, without interruption, judgment, or advice unless she asked for it. She found herself opening up in ways she had thought impossible, realizing that trust could be rebuilt when someone truly listened. The man, too, shared more of himself. He told her about his work on the land, about winters harsher than this one, and about the loneliness that had once seemed unbearable. She listened, fascinated by his resilience and the quiet strength that carried him through life. In sharing their stories, a bond formed, a bond built not on need or obligation, but on understanding, respect, and mutual care. One cold evening, as snow began to fall lightly outside, she looked at him with a question she had been holding back. "Do you ever feel lonely?" He sighed softly, looking into the fire. "Sometimes. But I've learned that being alone doesn't always mean being lonely. And sometimes, helping someone else, it fills that emptiness in a way nothing else can." She thought about that, realizing that she had been running from her own loneliness for so long, seeking warmth in the wrong places, hoping for care from those who could not give it. Here, she was learning that real warmth came from trust, understanding, and human connection, not just from survival or fear. Over time, small gestures became meaningful traditions. She would fetch fresh water in the morning, and he would set it near the fire. She would help prepare meals, and he would make sure she had time to rest afterward. They shared quiet evenings, sometimes reading aloud from old books, sometimes sitting in silence while the wind howled outside. Each day, each small act built trust and deepened the connection between them. One day, as they repaired a section of the old fence, she looked at him seriously. "I feel safer here than I have anywhere else. I can't explain it, but I trust you. And I think I can trust myself again, too." He paused, leaning on his tool, and nodded. "That's all I hoped for, to give you a chance to feel safe, to feel strong again. Nothing more, nothing less." The woman smiled, a bright, genuine smile that reached her eyes. It was the first time in a long time that she felt proud of herself, proud of her progress, and hopeful for the future. She realized that safety and trust were not just physical, they were emotional. And she had found both here, in a quiet house on the edge of a snow-covered field, with a man who had offered nothing but kindness and patience. Weeks passed, and the bond between them grew stronger. The woman no longer felt like a guest. She felt like someone who belonged, even if only temporarily. She had found a sense of dignity, self-respect, and confidence that she had thought lost forever. And he, in turn, had discovered the joy of seeing someone heal, of witnessing trust slowly bloom, and of knowing that his small acts of care had made a lasting impact. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, she turned to him quietly. I think I'm ready for the world again, but I don't want to forget this place or you. You've given me so much more than shelter. You've given me hope." He looked at her, warmth in his eyes. "And you've given me the same. Seeing you grow stronger, trusting again, learning to believe in kindness, it's changed me too." They sat together in silence, the fire crackling, the snow falling lightly outside, and the house filled with a quiet, steady warmth that was far more than heat from the fireplace. It was the warmth of trust, of patience, and of two people learning that real connection could heal even the deepest wounds. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about how far she had come in such a short time. From desperation and fear, she had moved to safety, trust, and confidence. She realized that the journey was far from over, but she now had the strength and guidance to face whatever came next. And she understood more clearly than ever that real warmth came from hearts willing to care, not from fear or survival. And in that small wooden house, as the man sat quietly by the fire, both of them knew that their lives had been forever changed, not by grand gestures, but by small, steady acts of kindness, patience, and understanding. The days began to feel longer, but in a way that brought calm instead of exhaustion. The woman had settled into a steady rhythm of life at the small wooden house. Mornings were for chores, afternoons for tending the small garden and helping with simple repairs, and evenings for quiet reflection by the fire. She had begun to understand the value of routine, of small steps, and of quiet moments spent learning to trust herself and others. The man, for his part, had grown accustomed to her presence, though he never took it for granted. He still moved with the same quiet care, observing her progress, letting her take responsibility for small tasks, and always encouraging her in gentle ways. One morning, as the woman swept the floor near the entrance, she noticed the way sunlight reflected off the frost on the windows. She paused, marveling at the beauty of the morning. It had been a long time since she had taken the time to notice such things. Her life, for years, had been a constant struggle for survival. Now, she could see the world around her without fear clouding her vision. The man watched her quietly from the doorway, smiling faintly at the sight of her taking a moment for herself. "It's a good day," he said softly. "The sun is out, the wind has calmed, and everything feels a little lighter." She turned to him, a faint smile on her face. "I've never noticed mornings like this before. I've seen the sun rise, but I never stopped to watch it." "That's because you were always running," he said gently, "always trying to survive. But now you have a chance to simply live, and that makes all the difference." Her heart tightened at his words. They reminded her of how much her life had been defined by fear, by the need to endure hardship, by the constant worry of not having enough. Now, in this small house, she could see that life could be different. Not perfect, not free from struggle, but quieter, gentler, and filled with the possibility of hope. The following days brought small victories. She learned to manage the household tasks efficiently, gained confidence in her abilities, and even began planning improvements to the house. The man encouraged her initiative, praising her efforts in subtle, meaningful ways. She realized that her contributions were not only useful, but appreciated, a feeling she had not experienced in years. One afternoon, as they worked together on repairing a section of the fence, she paused to wipe the sweat from her brow. "I feel stronger," she said slowly, thinking carefully about her words. "Not just because of work, but because I can trust myself again. I can make decisions without fear of failing completely." The man nodded, leaning on his tool and observing her progress. "That's the first step," he said. "Strength isn't just about muscles or skill. It's about believing in yourself, even when the world has told you otherwise." She thought about that as she resumed hammering the fence posts. Each strike was precise, confident, and measured. She realized that for the first time in a long while, she could take action without second-guessing herself constantly. She could trust her judgment, her instincts, and her ability to handle life's challenges. Evenings became moments of reflection and shared conversation. They would sit by the fire after finishing chores, sipping tea and speaking about small topics, memories from childhood, dreams for the future, or observations about the world around them. Sometimes the woman would remain quiet, simply listening as the man read aloud from one of the old books he kept on his shelves. Other times, they would laugh softly at small jokes or share observations about the animals nearby. These moments, quiet as they seemed, strengthened their bond. They were learning to rely on each other, not out of necessity, but out of trust and companionship. One evening, after the fire had burned low and the stars were beginning to appear outside, she turned to him with a serious expression. I think I might be ready to leave soon," she said softly, her voice hesitant. The man looked at her, not surprised, but with a calm understanding. "That's your choice," he said. "You've grown stronger and you should follow the path that is right for you." Her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that I'll lose this safety, this peace. Afraid that the world outside won't be kind. And I don't want to forget all that I've learned here. I don't want to lose the trust I've found." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Leaving doesn't mean forgetting. Everything you've learned, the strength, the trust, the hope, you carry with you. The world might be harsh, but now you have tools to face it, and you'll always have a home here should you need it." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming gratitude and realization of what she had gained. She had been offered shelter, warmth, and safety, but she had gained so much more: confidence, dignity, and the understanding that she deserved care and respect. The following days were filled with preparation. She began to gather her belongings, organize her thoughts, and consider the future. The man assisted in quiet ways, offering guidance without controlling her decisions. "Take what you need," he said. "And remember, the world is larger than this house, but the lessons you've learned here can carry you anywhere." As she packed, she noticed how her thoughts kept returning to small moments. The warmth of the fire, the taste of tea shared in silence, the laughter that had come slowly and softly over the past weeks. She realized that these were not just memories of comfort, they were lessons in trust, patience, and resilience. She had learned to care for herself and to accept care from others without fear or shame. On the day she planned to leave, the air was crisp and clear. The sun reflected off the frost and snow, making the world sparkle like a painting. She looked at the man, feeling a mixture of gratitude, hope, and lingering fear. I don't know how to say goodbye," she whispered. He shook his head gently, smiling. You don't need to. Just live, carry what you've learned here with you, and if ever you need help, this door will always be open. She paused, taking a deep breath. I will, and I will never forget you. He nodded, letting her words settle. Then that is enough. She stepped outside, feeling the cold air on her face. It was sharp, unfamiliar, and yet invigorating. The world beyond the small wooden house was vast and uncertain, but she no longer felt powerless. She had the knowledge, the confidence, and the resilience to face it. She walked slowly toward the path that led away from the house, taking one last glance at the small building that had been her sanctuary. The man watched her go, feeling a quiet pride and deep satisfaction. He had offered shelter, safety, and trust, but in return he had gained something equally valuable: the joy of seeing someone grow, heal, and reclaim their strength. He knew that the woman would carry what she had learned with her, spreading kindness and resilience in ways he might never witness. As the days passed and she adjusted to life beyond the house, letters and visits came. She wanted to share her progress, to show that she had not forgotten the lessons learned in the warmth of that small home. Each letter was a testament to the enduring power of trust and human connection. The man kept them carefully, reading them with a quiet smile, knowing that his simple act of kindness had helped create a ripple that extended far beyond the walls of his home. Though she had left physically, her presence remained in the house. The dishes she had cleaned, the garden she had tended, and the warmth she had brought to the daily routine, all of it lingered in small, subtle ways. And he, in turn, carried her memory in his heart, a reminder that even in solitude, connection could flourish, and kindness could make a lasting impact. Through this experience, both of them learned a truth that would stay with them forever. Warmth and care, when offered without expectation, can heal wounds that seem permanent. Trust, patience, and simple acts of compassion have the power to change lives, to transform fear into hope, and to teach that even in the harshest conditions, the human spirit can grow stronger, steadier, and more resilient. And so life continued, both for the man in his quiet home and for the woman who had learned to face the world anew. They were forever changed, bound by a story of trust, understanding, and the quiet power of human kindness. The woman walked along the snowy path, the small wooden house slowly fading behind her. Each step was deliberate, filled with a mix of nervousness, hope, and determination. She had spent weeks in that quiet, warm place, learning to trust, to heal, and to believe in herself again. Now she was leaving, not out of desperation, but because she was ready. The world outside was still unpredictable, still cold at times, but she carried with her something far stronger than fear: courage. As she reached the edge of the clearing, she paused and looked back one last time. The smoke from the chimney curled gently into the sky, the sun glinted on the frost-covered roof, and the warm light from the windows reminded her of the countless moments of kindness she had experienced there. She smiled softly, feeling gratitude swelling in her chest. That house and the man who had welcomed her without judgment had given her more than shelter. They had given her hope. Her journey back into the wider world was not easy. The snow crunched beneath her boots, the wind bit at her cheeks, and the roads were unfamiliar. But she walked steadily, remembering the lessons she had learned: patience, resilience, and the knowledge that small steps could carry her far. Every time doubt crept into her mind, she thought of the man, the fire, and the warmth she had felt. She repeated to herself his words: strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and patient. Within a few days, she reached the small town nearby. She had little in the way of possessions or money, but she had something far more valuable: confidence and a plan. She sought work, first at small places that needed help with chores, then at larger shops where she could interact with others. With each day, her confidence grew, and so did her sense of belonging. People began to notice her diligence, her patience, and the quiet strength she carried. She realized that kindness, when offered freely, often inspired respect and trust in return. Letters to the man became part of her routine. Each week she wrote to share her progress, small victories, and the moments of joy she experienced. She told him about the people she met, the work she was doing, and the sense of pride she felt in earning her own place in the world again. Each letter was filled with gratitude, but also with a sense of determination, a promise to herself that she would continue building a life rooted in strength, patience, and hope. The man read each letter carefully, feeling a quiet satisfaction in every line. He did not need thanks or recognition. Seeing her grow, heal, and thrive was reward enough. He stored the letters in a small box near the fire, reading them often when the house was quiet. They reminded him that the smallest acts of care, offering warmth, listening without judgment, extending trust, could ripple outward, changing lives in ways neither of them could fully measure. Months passed, and the woman's life flourished. She made friends who respected her, found work that gave her a sense of pride, and even began to dream again about what the future could hold. Yet she never forgot the quiet wooden house on the hill, or the man who had offered her more than a bed. He had offered her dignity, trust, and the knowledge that she mattered. One day, she returned to the house, not out of necessity, but out of gratitude. She wanted to show the man how far she had come, to express the depth of her thanks, and to reconnect with the place where she had found hope. As she approached, the familiar sight of the house filled her with warmth, even in the cold winter air. The smoke from the chimney, the snow on the roof, and the soft light from the windows all felt like home. The man opened the door when she knocked. His face broke into a faint smile, recognizing her immediately. "I wasn't expecting you," he said, his voice calm but welcoming. "I wanted to come back," she said softly, "to say thank you and to show you that everything you taught me I've carried with me." He nodded, stepping aside to let her in. The warmth of the house enveloped her immediately, familiar and comforting. She felt the fire in her chest grow, not from the flames but from the memory of trust, care, and the lessons she had learned there. They sat by the fire together, sharing tea as they had so many times before. She spoke about her successes, the small victories in her work, the friendships she had built, and the sense of purpose she now carried. He listened, smiling faintly, proud but humble. She realized that she was no longer the same person who had arrived weeks earlier, lost, scared, and desperate. She was stronger, wiser, and ready to face life's challenges with dignity. At one point she paused, her voice soft. "I realized something," she said. "I thought I needed people to take care of me, to give me warmth, but what I really needed was someone to care about me, to help me believe I could care for myself again." The man nodded, understanding perfectly. "That's the difference," he said. "True kindness doesn't just warm the body, it strengthens the heart. It teaches people to trust themselves, to trust life, and to believe in hope again." They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling softly, the wind murmuring outside. In that quiet moment, both of them realized that their lives had been forever changed. The woman had gained confidence, dignity, and resilience. The man had witnessed the power of compassion, the joy of seeing someone heal, and the quiet satisfaction of making a lasting difference. Eventually, the woman stood, glancing at the man with a mixture of gratitude and affection. "I should go," she said. "I have a life now and I need to live it fully. But I wanted you to know I will never forget this place or you," he nodded. "And I will never forget you," he said quietly. "Remember what you've learned here, carry it with you and share it with the world." She smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. She left the house, stepping into the bright winter sunlight, her heart filled with hope. Each step she took was confident, measured, and steady. She was no longer a person defined by fear or desperation. She was someone who had learned to trust, to grow, and to embrace life again. As she walked down the snowy path, she thought about the lessons she had learned. That trust could be rebuilt, that kindness could heal, and that even the smallest acts of care could ripple outward, changing lives in ways that could not be measured. She realized that the man had given her more than warmth. He had given her the tools to build a life of dignity and hope. Back in the small wooden house, the man watched the horizon where she had disappeared from view. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that he had played a small part in her journey. He had offered her safety and care without expectation, and in return, he had witnessed something extraordinary, the quiet transformation of a human being who had learned to believe in hope again. The days turned into weeks, and the woman thrived in her new life. She continued to write letters, sharing stories of her work, her friends, and her growing sense of confidence. The man kept each letter carefully, reading them often, finding joy and pride in the progress she had made. Each letter reminded him that small acts of kindness, when given freely, could have far-reaching effects, changing lives in ways he could never fully measure. Over time, the woman became a source of inspiration for others. She helped those in need, shared her story, and encouraged people to believe in themselves. She carried with her the lessons learned in that small wooden house: patience, trust, resilience, and the quiet strength that comes from being treated with dignity and respect. And in that small house, the man continued his quiet life, strengthened by the knowledge that one simple act of compassion had created a lasting ripple. The warmth he had given had grown beyond the walls of his home, touching a life, changing it, and spreading hope into the world. Years later, the woman would often return, not out of necessity, but out of gratitude. Each visit was a reminder of how far she had come, of the person she had become, and of the life she now had because someone had chosen to care. And each time, they would sit together by the fire, sharing tea, laughter, and the quiet understanding that true warmth comes from hearts willing to help, guide, and believe in the best of others. The story of the woman and the man became a testament to the power of kindness, trust, and human connection. It showed that true warmth is not something offered in exchange for something else, but a gift freely given, capable of healing even the deepest wounds. And it proved that, even in the coldest and hardest of circumstances, a single act of compassion could change the course of a life forever. The woman had left a place of fear, desperation, and uncertainty. She had found safety, guidance, and trust. She had gained courage, resilience, and a sense of purpose. And in the end, she returned to the world stronger, wiser, and filled with hope, carrying with her the knowledge that kindness could heal, and that human hearts, when open, patient, and caring, could change lives in ways that endured far beyond a single moment or act. And so their lives continued, separate yet connected, each strengthened by the lessons learned, and the bond formed in a small wooden house on the edge of a snowy field. A bond that proved that real warmth, real care, and real love exist in the simplest, purest forms of human. Kindness,